Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be with you this morning. I wish I was there in person. I've had the good fortune of traveling fairly extensively through the eastern half of Australia, but I have never been to WA, and it is on my bucket list of a place I want to go and visit. And when I do, Ian and I'm coming to see you, so be ready for it sometime. So I thought I'd start you out this morning with one of my favorite topics, and that's simply money and cash. And although I like to think that I'm not only in regenerative agriculture for the money, let's face it, if we can't make money at what we're doing, all we have is an expensive hobby. And I was forced down this path. Many of you know my story through the occurrence of 4 years of natural disasters. And I tell people, although it was extremely hard to deal with at the time, it was absolutely the best thing that could have happened to me, because I wouldn't be leading the life I am now, traveling and meeting all of the great regenerative agriculturists all over the world. It's exciting for me to hear what Ian said, that there was a buzz yesterday evening after the day's activities, and that people were really asking some serious questions. I often tell people when I speak, for those of you who know me, it's not my first rodeo. I do this fairly often, and I've traveled extensively, spoke to many different people, groups, organizations. The toughest crowd I've ever spoke to was in 2012 at the South Australian No-Till Farmers Association. That was one tough crowd to talk to, but it was a real joy to go back 4 years later and to see how regenerative agriculture is taking hold. And now to hear it at this conference, it really is something special to behold. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a bit about today. So the first thing you have to determine is, how are you going to stay profitable? We talk about making changes to things, but how we do things, but how are we going to stay profitable? And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to increase your profitability using the same methods that got you there in the first place, that got you where you are today. And one of the things that drives me is that there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. You know, it was mentioned about John Kemp talking that plants are actually carnivores. I'm sure he was talking about rhizophagy, and I'll never forget the first time I learned about that. It just makes sense. The first time I learned about how plants are able to move that genetic material from that biology that enters into the cell roots up, that they're able to move that genetic material from that biology up onto the seed, so that when they produce seed, that genetic material is there to start the rhizophagy cycle, to start the nutrient cycle all over again. It's just absolutely fascinating what we can learn if we open our minds to it. My life was changed not only through those 4 years of natural disasters, but when I heard a rancher from Alberta, Canada speak. It was Don Campbell, and he told me this. He said, if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. But if you want to make major changes, change the way you see things. And that's what's exciting about conferences such as this one. It really allows us to change the way we see things. One of the things that I think all of us need to know and understand is just the importance of a healthy, diverse, perennial ecosystem. During those 4 years of natural disaster, I took great solace in walking out into my diverse perennial pastures And it was there that I really began to learn the power of observation and how important it is for us to understand how the ecosystem processes are driven due to the principles of a healthy ecosystem. You know, I learned how to farm from my father-in-law, and this is the picture of my father-in-law and his beloved disc. And my father-in-law just loved to till, and I learned how to farm from him. He tilled just for the sake of tilling. As a matter of fact, when he retired, he sold all of his equipment except that tractor, and he went and bought a brand new disc just so he could go disc for the neighbors for recreation. And here his son-in-law was moving down the no-till path, and that was pretty hard for him to take. And it was a good thing he loved his daughter, because I'm pretty sure I'd be out on the street if it wasn't for that. My father-in-law, he was a very tough sell, but I'll never forget in November of 2003, he watched me. I'd been no-till by that time for 10 plus years, and we harvested a 200 bushel maize crop on dry land in North Dakota, which hadn't been done in our county to my knowledge ever. And he asked my wife to get a camera and take a picture of him and my son standing in that field. Then I finally knew that I had him. I finally knew that it was making sense to him. Well, unfortunately, less than a month later, he passed away. But he thought he had the last laugh, because guess what Gabe got in his will? That's right, I got that disc. I didn't get the tractor, I got that disc, you know, which only lasted about a week and I sold it, but that's another whole story. So, fact of the matter is, I really came to the conclusion, as did many others. Ray Archuleta put this slide together, and I think he appropriately titled it, "This soil is naked, hungry, thirsty, and running a fever." There's nothing on this soil protecting it from wind erosion, water erosion. There's no living plants to feed soil biology. Water is evaporating away. Temperatures are rising. There's everything wrong with this field and nothing right with it. We've destroyed our ecosystems. And I tell people I have the great fortune now that I travel extensively all over the world. And I can tell you that I have never, ever, not once, stood on a truly healthy ecosystem or a truly healthy farm or ranch. And that includes my own. I think we're all farming and ranching degraded ecosystems. But the good news is we can advance the function of those ecosystems. So this shows a photo. The left-hand side of the screen is my soil. The right-hand side is actually a perennial soil just across the fence line. I would contend that back in 1991, when my wife and I purchased the ranch from her parents, our soils were much more degraded than that on the right. But we regenerated those soils by practicing what we call regenerative agriculture. Now, there's many people trying to find a way to define regenerative agriculture, and this is the definition that we came up with. And I think it's pretty fitting. It's farming and ranching in synchrony with nature to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore ecosystem function, starting with life in the soil and moving to all life above the soil. I think that's very encompassing, and it epitomizes what we're trying to do today all over the world. We do that using the 6 principles of soil health. And as I travel extensively, I am pretty arrogant in saying that you put me anywhere in the world where there's dry land, land-based agriculture, and I can use these principles and rules to drive the 4 ecosystem processes. Now, my book's already outdated, and we are working on another one, because we added the 6th principle, the principle of context. You have to farm and ranch within your context. You know, I've had the good fortune of hearing Ian and I talked many times about how they farm and ranch in their context, how they use the natural species that grow there between the cash crops. That's absolutely brilliant. That's farming and ranching within your context. Minimize disturbance. As we know, we have to reduce all disturbances, not only tillage, but also disturbances from chemical input, whether it be synthetics or not. We have to maximize armor on the soil surface. We have to protect that soil from wind erosion, water erosion, evaporation. We have to provide the home and habitat for that microbiology. We have to maximize biodiversity. And unfortunately, agriculture today has minimized diversity. And we've seen this real crash in biodiversity, whether we're talking plants, animals, or insects. We have to have continuous living roots as long as possible, collecting that solar energy and feeding that soil microbiology. And then we need to integrate animals as much as possible throughout the landscape. Landscapes do not function and ecosystems do not function properly without animals and insects. We also use what we call the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship. The rule of compounding. What that simply means is that for every action we put onto the landscape, there's multiple compounding or cascading effects. These are either positive or negative, never neutral. Everything we do has compounding positive or negative effects. Again, the rule of diversity. Diversity comes into play again. We have to have diversity for both soil health, animal health, and human health. And then the rule of disruption. We cannot do the same thing over and over and expect different results. You know, I use the analogy that if you're training for the Olympics, you don't lift the same amount of weights, you don't run the same distance each time. You vary, you disrupt your routine. That builds strength. It also builds strength in our ecosystem. That is a picture from my ranch here in North Dakota. What those principles and rules do is drive the 4 ecosystem processes. And Alan Savory laid this out beautifully. The energy cycle, the water cycle, the nutrient cycle, and biodiversity. Our goals as stewards or caretakers of the land should be to use the principles and rules to drive these 4 ecosystem processes. That's how we create wealth. True wealth is created by taking solar energy through a living plant. This is a photo of a diverse cover crop on some of my cropland fields. Look at the amount of solar energy that's being captured there. There's virtually no sunlight hitting the soil surface. It is all being captured by living plants. Plants are using part of that, of course, those carbon compounds for growth, and part of it they're translocating to the roots where they're exuding it into the soil to feed soil biology. And I really think if we're going to mitigate climate change at all, it's going to rest on the backs of farmers and ranchers. And farmers and ranchers need to be paid for what they're doing. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk about next is, I think, a real misconception that many farmers and ranchers have. This particular photo here, I clipped a small area of that, and then I sent it to the lab for analysis. And this is the analysis, and I apologize, I have this in pounds per acre. But in that cover crop was 209 pounds of nitrogen, 51 pounds of phosphorus, 289 pounds per acre of potassium. You can see the calcium, the sulfur. Look at the carbon there, 3,591 pounds of carbon. Now, what I didn't tell you is that Gabe Brown has applied 0 nutrients of any kind, either synthetic or I haven't gone and spread manure on these fields. I haven't used compost teas or compost. The only nutrients are those that are naturally cycling. So I ask you, how good and productive of a crop could you produce off that amount of nutrients? You see, people, what many of us don't understand, 97% approximately of what a plant needs for growth comes from the atmosphere. It's carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. There's a small amount, 3% approximately, of minerals that come from the soil. As farmers and ranchers, we're wondering how to make a living. The living is right above us and right below us. We just have to be smart enough to take that and convert it via biology into usable forms for the plants. As is above, so is below. When we have these diverse polycultures, we're moving these nutrients deeper into the soil profile. We're adding root biomass. We're transferring nutrients, including water, throughout the soil. You see, this isn't rocket science, and it's really not that difficult to do. Gabe Brown is not a very intelligent person. I just know how to take sand, silt, and clay, and then with glomalin from mycorrhizal fungi and with biotic glues, we start the formation of soil aggregates, and we grow soil. I tell people, I'm a poor cattleman, I'm an even worse farmer, but I can grow soil because I know how to build soil aggregates. And we all need those soil aggregates. Ray Archuleta said it best when he said, plant and soil are one. We have to understand how these ecosystems function, how soil aggregates are formed, and then how biology interacts therein. What you see here is simply a difference in management. Both the pad on the front of that shovel and the rest of the soil on that shovel are the same soil classification. They are both no-till soils, greater than 10 years of no-till. The difference is management. One steward focuses on building soil aggregates in the natural nutrient cycle, where the other steward focuses on putting inputs for maximum yield, but not necessarily maximum profit. What you're seeing here, this is a photo that was taken in South Central Manitoba, Canada. It actually shows the ability to drastically change soils through one growing season. And the only difference was there was the same cover crop grown on this whole field, both of these soil clumps here. The difference is one part was grazed by livestock doing multiple moves per day, where the other part was grazed by livestock only being moved once every 2 days. Think about that for a minute. Look at the difference in those soils. And it all comes because of that interaction between animals, grazing herbivores, and plants. That's absolutely amazing. This is what we've been able to do on our farm. We started with soil that was even more degraded than that on the right-hand side of this picture, and we've regenerated it and grown topsoil to a much greater depth. We did some very in-depth analysis, taking soil cores down over 1 meter deep. We took 300 soil cores on our ranch. We now found that in spots, not our entire ranch, but in spots, we went from 3 inches of aggregated soil to now we're well aggregated down deeper than 48 inches in places. What that's meant to us is a 4-fold increase in the amount of carbon we have in our soil, and we're able to infiltrate well over 30 inches of water per hour. Now, Bismarck, North Dakota has never in recorded history received 30 inches of moisture in a year, let alone in an hour. But the fact of the matter is, whatever rainfall falls, we're going to be able to infiltrate into our soil. Then we're going to be able to store there. That makes us very resilient to drought. The past 3 years, 2020, 21, and 22, were the 3 driest years in recorded history here in Bismarck, North Dakota. We harvested a cash crop every year. We were profitable every year. We did not have to sell any livestock. Yet our neighbors sold their herds and they only harvested 1 crop in 3 years. You see, we build resiliency based on our stewardship. Your farm, your ranch is a direct reflection of you. I can't tell you the number of people I talk to and they tell me, but Gabe, you don't understand, my soils aren't like that. And I tell them, I know what the problem is. Go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, there's your problem. Your farm, your ranch is a direct reflection of you. If it's not what you want it to be, then change your stewardship of it. Now I'm going to move into something that really has piqued my interest, and it's where I focus a lot of my time lately. It's about the difference in nutrient density of the foods we're producing. So what you see here, obviously 2 eggs. The egg on the right was from one of our free-range hens. The egg on the left was from the conventional production model. Take a look at what we're seeing. The nutrient density of the food we are consuming has decreased anywhere from 15 to 65% in the past 50 years. This is the mineral depletion in vegetables. Take a look at that. 27 kinds of vegetables, and here's the aggregate. Copper declined 76%, calcium 46%. All the nutrients they tested for have declined. Here's meat production, average of 10 different kinds of meat. Take a look at that. Iron declined by 54%. You see, people, what many are calling climate change, I think is really the result of degradation. We're degrading our soil resources, we're degrading our ecosystem, and it's not only affecting our production, it's affecting human health also. An individual today would have to consume twice as much meat, 3 times as much fruit, 4 times as many vegetables to get the same amount of minerals and trace elements compared to 1940. Think about that. And we wonder why we have a human health crisis going on. What we're involved with now is we're actually involved in some very robust scientific studies that are comparing grains, fruits, vegetables, proteins grown in and on soils that are going down the regenerative path, and comparing that to the same variety or species of grain, fruit, vegetable, proteins grown and raised in the conventional production model. And we're primarily comparing the phytochemical richness of these products, the terpenoids, phenols, carotenoids, and tocopherols. And what we're finding is that the diversity of microbiology in the soil, the diversity of plants above the soil, and these phytochemical compounds then, the array of them and the density of them are directly correlated to the health of the soil. You see, my partners and I firmly believe that the time has come for us to again think of food as preventative medicine. We need to get away from a society that is treating symptoms and a society that treats patients to one that is using food as preventative medicine. And then farmers and ranchers will truly be paid for what they are doing. We're seeing over here in the United States and in other countries a real interest from companies, corporations, businesses to source regeneratively grown and raised products. I spend a great deal of my time now meeting with boards of directors, heads of sustainability of these large companies, explaining to them why they need to focus on sourcing regeneratively grown and raised products. I like to think of it as common ground for common good. You know, I don't care where your interest lies. Does your interest lie in climate change? Regenerative agriculture, more than any other form of agriculture,